Welcome back. Next up, part 6, disallow the reuse of the score line. So right now there's a bug in how our game behaves. Once you click a score line to assign a score to it, for example, let's say, let's just say that I'm trying to assign this to be a small straight. It is not, it's 3, 4, 5. That's only 3 numbers in a row, but I assign it, I get 0 points. That should be it for small straight. It should be disabled, or somehow I shouldn't be able to use it anymore. So now if I happen to get a small straight, we'll see if I actually get one. Come on, give me a 4. Nope. Okay, I'm just gonna throw that one away. Here we have 4, 5, 6. Give me a 3, please. Nope. Throw that one away. Okay, I had to roll a bunch of times and edit it out, but I finally got a small straight, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can come down here and change that score to now be 30, but that's not how the game works. The part of the strategy and the luck, all of it combines where you're sort of forced, or you're absolutely forced to just pick something. Even if you don't have any good values, even if you have everything except for a Yahtzee, but you don't get a Yahtzee on the last roll, you're gonna have to score it as a 0. So you're trying to preserve the more valuable ones as you go. And if you can just override any zeros at any point, like right now I have 0 and 2s. If I can say, I'm going to keep that 2 and that 2, and now I'm assigning it here, and now it's 4 points. That's cheating. Well, you're not cheating because the game lets you do it, but that's a problem. So what we need to do is make it so that you can no longer click on one of these. They're not going to call that do score method that we've seen many times. In the rule row, when you click on it, it's actually adding to the score, or updating the score. So we want to prevent that. So here is the rule row, and this is the thing you're clicking on, this TR element. So we can add some styles to make it look disabled, or put a slash or a line through, which I've actually given you a class. I mentioned that in the note somewhere. I provided classes that you can use for styling purposes, but functionally, we still want to make sure you can't click. So we want to disable this on click, and the easiest way to do that is to selectively set this to be null. Now, we don't want it to be null right now because none of these are going to work. So let's assign this roll to small straight. And now let's look in the props for that rule row. If we look in the parent, which is the score table, we see that the parent has the scores prop, and then it actually passes it down to the relevant rule rows. So most of them, because we haven't actually registered a score, most of them don't have a prop called score. But if we look at the one for the small straight, I have to keep scrolling down, the one I just clicked on, where are you? It has score set to 30. So we can use that and say, if there is a score prop, if there's something in that prop, then disable that on click. So all we need to do is use this.props.score, and we want to be able to click and call do score if there is no score. So if this.props.score is set to undefined, question mark, we want onClick to be this.props.doScore. Otherwise, meaning that it is not undefined, there's a number there like 30 or 40 or whatever the score is, you shouldn't be able to then click again to get a new do score and have that run and get you a new score. So we'll set onClick to be null. Let's test it. So let's throw one of these away. Let's say that that's 3 of a kind. It's not, so we get 0. Now let's keep these 5s and hope we get more 5s. No, darn. Let's just throw that away and try again. Okay, we got 3 2s. We actually have 4. So we've got these 2s. Let's run it through 3 of a kind. Now I can't use it anymore. It's visually not very clear, so we're going to fix that in a moment, but I can actually click. It's not working. And if we look in the React Dev Tools, we can see it has a score value already, which is what is setting the onClick to be null. Okay, so as far as styling it, I mentioned there is a class that I've already given you. So there's rule row active, and then there's another one, rule row dash disabled. And right now I'm just going to give them all disabled, and they look like this. So we can selectively use that. It's purple. There's a strike through, but my favorite part, there's a nice animation that you get for free when you actually apply that class. So we'll go back to active, but we want to selectively change it from rule row active to rule row disabled. And you can see the class definitions right here. Here we go, rule row disabled. Also, there's some hover effects so that when you hover over a disabled one, you get a not allowed cursor. So these styles, I don't know, you might like them, but it makes it clearer what's going on. So we're going to selectively change the class name. So we want rule row dash in either dash active or dash disabled. So how do we do that? Well, what we can do is use JSX braces here and then change this to backticks around the class names. And then right here, we can actually interpolate a value with a $sign, as we've seen before, and check the exact same thing. This.props.score is equal to undefined, and I'm going to refactor this, but if it is undefined, the class we want to add in, the string, would be active. Otherwise, we want disabled. So this is kind of a long line. It works. What we're doing is deciding all inside of here if we're going to add active or disabled to the end of this class. So let's test it out. You can see everything is currently active. If I do my first roll, let's go for a full house. Nope. Okay, we got one. So if I click full house, you'll see there's going to be a nice animation, that gradient filling up. Also, there's a strike through effect and the cursor. I don't know if it's showing up in the video, but I can't click anymore. Well, I physically can't actually call that method anymore, but also the cursor is changing to this not allowed versus when I go the active ones that are allowed, it goes to a pointer. So I really like that animation. It's kind of fun having it fill up like a gradient, or it is a gradient, but having it fill up like, I don't know, it's like a progress bar or something, checking it off. Okay, so I'm going to refactor this a bit because first of all, we're reusing this. This.props.score equals undefined. So up top, I'm going to make a variable called disabled. So disabled is going to be a variable set to score not equal to undefined. And score needs to be this.props.score. But instead of that, I'm actually going to refactor things even further. At the top, I'm going to extract things from the prop. So I want to grab score, name, and do score from this.props. So if you haven't seen this syntax, well, we've seen it before a couple times in the course, but I now have three variables. It's basically saying const score equals this.props.score. It's going to look for a property in this.props called score, set it to a variable score. Look for name and props, set it to a variable name. So now I can shorten my code up. Anytime I'm talking about this.props, I can just now talk about score. Same thing with do score, same thing here, same thing with name. This doesn't actually make a difference for how the code works. It just shortens up our render. We don't have to type this.props a lot. But as far as disabled, this will be a variable set to true or false. So if score is not equal to undefined, that means disabled is true. So then we go to our button here. When you click, we're going to check, is disabled true? And if it is true, we actually need to swap the order here. Null, otherwise do score. And why do we need to swap it? Well, it makes sense to call this variable disabled instead of not disabled. So we could have done this and switched it. But now we're just checking if it is disabled, it should be null. Nothing should happen when you click. Otherwise, call do score. Same thing up here. So we can say, is disabled true? If it is, then we want the disabled class. Otherwise, we want the active class, like that. Okay, so minor refactor, just grabbing all these pieces from the props, making them into separate variables, making another variable called disabled so that we didn't have to repeat that line, checking if score is undefined. Everything works fine. We've got this nice animation coming from CSS. We assign something. Let's try and get a 4. Nope, no cigar. I assign it, and I can no longer use it. Woohoo, look at all that. Great fun. Okay, that's it for this part.